Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage counseling using the EFT method, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one session in both French or English, and also to group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV therapy and coaching services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoach.drdanamzallag.com. Today, I'm very excited to have, for our 7th episode of season 10, a very special guest and author podcaster, Hubert. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guest to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Devanon, the floor is yours.
Hey, Dan, thank you so much for having me on your show today. I couldn't be more excited to be here. I'm truly honored. With all the billions of people in the world you could have asked to come on your show, you chose little old me, and I just appreciate that so much, and I thank you. Yeah, my name's Devanon. I wrote a book called Sex, Drugs, and Jesus, and it's my memoir that covers my life up to this point. I'm about to turn 40 this year, and I also host a podcast called Sex, Drugs, and Jesus as well, which explores a lot of religion, a lot of sex, a lot of hot topics in the world today.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your own life journey with our hundreds of thousands of listeners that we've hit a couple of weeks ago. So thanks again, Devanon. I really appreciate it. So tell me a little bit about your own personal journey to happiness and your recovery through the different journey that you've encountered.
Well, wow. So, I can say that I'm happy now because I finally come to a point where I accept who I am. So who am I? I'm a member of the LGBTQIA community. I have a strong religious background. And although I grew up in the church, I find that I'm my happiest and my closest to God now that I'm no longer affiliated with any physical churches. And so the trauma in my life, came from, an abusive household, being raised in an atmosphere where it wasn't okay to be yourself. Going to Pentecostal churches, going to the military during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I was kicked out of church, Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas, specifically for not being straight. And that really sent me on a downward spiral. Then I ended up getting into drugs and everything like that, and became a drug dealer and went to jail a bunch of times. And, ended up homeless and everything like that. And, ultimately I'm happy now because I'm okay with everything that happened the way it happened. And it's led me to a point where I fully accept all aspects of my life.
Okay. So why this title of the book, Sex, Drugs, and Jesus? I mean, did you find, because you said that you were in the church, but you got kicked out. So wouldn't that kind of, in a way, be for you to be reluctant against the religion because you were judged for being for being gay, whatever it is? I mean, how did you react to that?
When that happened, it took me about 5 or 6 years before I ever walked into a church again. So I did rebel against religion and everything like that. And that speaks to how, I thought I was mature and I really wasn't. If that were to happen today, my advice to someone would be to go and find a church where you will be accepted rather than to throw God and everything away. Mm-hmm. But, I was in my 20s and very reactional and very emotional and everything like that. And I wasn't thinking straight, as I am now. But the first thing, I would not have gone to a church that wasn't, affirming. So if you're not straight, then you shouldn't be going to a church where you're not celebrated. So that was my first mistake in the first place. I shouldn't have been there. And so Sex, Drugs, and Jesus, well, if you read through the book and everything like that, there's a lot of sex, there's a lot of drugs, and there's a lot of talk about Jesus. Okay. And I thought it was a good mix because these are the hot topics that are in any kind of show or any kind of book that's popular. You have to have some sort of sexual element. Everyone likes to hear drug stories, so, and then religion, the Jesus part speaks to whatever, our quest for spirituality. I know not everybody's going to follow Jesus, and I'm great friends with people who don't believe in God or don't believe in anything. And I don't think any less of them because of that. But we all are on some kind of spiritual journey. So the Jesus in my book title and show title speak to all of our collective journey.
Beautiful. Wow. And when did you start finding solace in the religion and in reaching out to Jesus to be able to find some kind of peace and serenity?
After I began to very gingerly put my toe back into the religious waters after having been kicked out, I just searched many different ones. I started attending Buddhist temples and stuff like that, and really approaching it from a completely different mindset than I did before. Because when I was raised in the Christian church, Christianity approaches the subject like Christianity is the only religion that's right in the world, and then specifically Pentecostals believe that they're like the only people who are right in the world, and so I didn't want to go back at it from that perspective. I wanted to go back at it from a more open-minded and accepting perspective, understanding that no religion is perfect. None of them is more right than the other. And I just kind of hung out at, some places. I was like a fearful little kitten that had been hurt. I'm like, are they going to say something? Are they going to hurt me again? I never really volunteered in church again. And I had been in church since I was a child. And this all happened in my late 20s. And so it was never the same. It was never the same. So just over time, I tried a little here and a little there. And ultimately I was like, you know what? And especially when the pandemic came, I was at home anyway, I don't need to go to church to be close to God. So screw it.
You're right. I mean, because especially if God is everywhere, no matter which God it is, it could be the Jewish God, it could be the Christian, Jesus, whatever it is. It's more like a presence that you feel from within. You don't need to be at a specific location to be able to feel that presence. So in a way, it's kind of like from that aspect, Devan, when did you decide to say that you wanted to be able to share your story with the public? When did you say that I need to become an author? I need to write about it.
Can I say one more thing on what we just said before I answer that, please?
Go ahead.
I just want to say, like what you're saying is it's so poignant, because the most valuable time in our spiritual walk is when we're alone with our creator or whatever it is we choose to believe in. Now, see, I had it backwards. I used to think that I had to go to church to feel closest to God. And there are people out there, who really think that that's the best time. But it's just like if you're dating someone, which is you're trying to get close to God, you're basically dating him. The most important time, if you're dating, like say a human, is when you're alone with that human, not when you're in the middle of a movie theater with Correct. That person. So if someone's out there listening and you think that your best spiritual time is when you're at church, I ask you to reconsider that, and think about it from God's perspective, because he really wants to get you to himself. And that's when you really grow, not when you're at church. And so I started taking notes on this book back in 2013. I had just gotten home to Louisiana. I had like 3 felonies. And so I was on probation, and so I was living back with my parents at the age of 30 because I was homeless and I didn't have anywhere to live. And so they retrieved me from Houston, Texas, which is 4 hours away from Baton Rouge. And my head was still in a fog, but I could tell that there was a lot that had happened, and then the Lord had delivered me from a lot of stuff. And I didn't want to just go and have a quiet, successful life and not tell anyone about it. And so a book is better than standing up in church and giving a testimony or telling a few people you may know. A book, like a podcast, is a recorded testament, just like the Bible, that will outlive me. And so it's more expedient. I thought it more expedient to write out the whole testimony so that people can have it for generations to come.
That is incredible. Now, how did you let the world know about your story beside the book? Have you gone and done some testimony at different churches to be able to let them know your story? Or it was primarily the book that was able to explain your own journey?
Well, I haven't been invited to any to speak. If they ever called upon me, I would go. But no, the book, then my podcast, and I go on other people's shows, like I'm doing now so far. And then I have a blog on my website as well. And my website, sexdrugsandjesus.com, is a resource site as well. And so that's what we're doing so far. We'll see what other doors open in the future.
Beautiful. And now, as of today, when you go back and thinking about what you went through in life, how did that change you as a human being? Not necessarily connected with God per se, but just in general, like put aside the religion, put aside the beliefs, put aside everything, but just as an entity. as an individual yourself, how are you with other people, interacting with them? Are you trying to preach the religion of Christianity, or you're just trying to preach being a good person?
Oh, I preach religious independence is what I preach to people, because my experience taught me my mistakes and stuff like that. And so that's my goal, is to help people to be more clear-minded than I was. So see, like, I was over churched. I went to church too much, and there is such a thing as being over churched.
Okay.
I looked up to them too much, and I put pastors and worship leaders and churches on a pedestal, and I really wasn't worshiping God as much as I thought I was. Because, when you're in these churches, you feel all good and stuff like that. And a lot of times we get that confused with godly inspiration, and really it's not. It's really just the atmosphere that you're in. And so I don't preach Christianity to people. I like to have an open dialogue about all sorts of different spirituality. So one of my greatest prayers to God is to reveal himself to people in a way that they're going to know that he's talking to them. I cannot preach and force somebody to be a Christian. And the Lord only ever said that if he be lifted up, then he will draw all men onto him. So any preacher, the only thing that we can do is speak about what God has done. And if he wants anybody to be attracted to that, then he will attract them. So I can't go out and physically convert somebody like that. Only God has that sort of power. So my mission is not complicated from that aspect. So I'm vulnerable about the mistakes that I made, how I slept around too much and got HIV and hepatitis. See, when I got kicked out of church, what happened was I went and sought community in the nightlife. So I preach about how, we really need community, and we're going to find it one way or the other, be it in gangs, trap houses, drug houses, churches, or whatever. But I didn't know that that's really what I was missing when they fired me, from volunteering at Lakewood Church.
So that's Joel Osteen Church, right?
Correct.
Okay, I see. So now how is it now living with the virus, and how to interact with other people, and especially in the community of LGBT, etc.? Are you like being perceived as, oh, well, this person is this or this person is that, or you're being very welcome to the community? You're being, how is that happening now for you?
Well, the way I interact with people, having gone through all that I did, Dan, I really feel like it makes me more accessible to people. I've always done a lot of volunteer work and tried to do my best to help people. But now that I've really been all the way to the bottom and stuff like that, there's a different kind of intensity behind the way that I go about trying to reach the world this time. Okay. It's stronger, it's more potent. I'm not judged for having HIV and hepatitis. I don't really come across a lot of other people with hepatitis, though, so I really lucked up with that one. Okay. But no, because the culture now is, damn, so many people in the LGBTQIA plus community are HIV positive. It's not like it was before. Now you have PrEP, you have the pill that you can take if you're not HIV positive to help you to not get it should you become exposed somehow. The dating apps, all, pretty much all of them have a way on there where you can say if you're positive, non-detectable or whatever. And so people are really, really like cool about that now, but it hasn't been that way. So like 10 years ago and stuff like that, there was a lot of stigma. I didn't really think I should be out having sex with people. I didn't feel sexy enough to do it anyway. And I was very much worried, how do I bring this up? Is it the first conversation? Is it the first date? How, when you do it, so I totally felt like a leper and totally shut down and just withdrew from everyone.
So now, what are the steps that you take today into finding your happiness, Devanon? Is there any step that because, our listeners are, a different variety of cases that they deal with certain struggles in their lives. It's hard to be able to know which one because I have not spoken to my 100,000 listeners. But what would you say to anyone who is listening, what they should do to be able to achieve their own happiness, or what step they should take?
I say get spiritually balanced, because so many problems in our life stem from a spiritual deficiency. People have a lot of anxiety. This here relates to a lack of spiritual peace, because once you achieve a certain state of like spiritual growth, nirvana, whatever, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, then it doesn't matter what other craziness is going on around you. you're able to be that still force. Doesn't matter what people are saying. The kids are acting up. In my case, the cats are acting up. The neighbors are acting up. The homeowners association is acting up. Whatever it is, I'm able to maintain stillness and not let other people's negativity and anxiety affect me. And so, but I've only been able to achieve that by getting closer to God. God is who I choose to believe in. So what I'm saying is you can't be casual about spiritual growth. You have to get after it, study the Bible or whatever book, pray, meditate. Don't just do it every now and then. You go to work every day, someone you're dating, you're at least texting them every day. You have got to be in communication, with your higher power, like you're serious about getting to know him or her or they, or however you
Or
wish
whatever. Yeah.
power, but you can't just put God on the shelf until some trouble comes and you don't have a relationship built up. None of us want to be called upon just when somebody wants something from us. And, when God is no different, take the time to invite him into everything and get close to him and, and get that spiritual peace. I see a licensed clinical social worker. My partner and I see a licensed marriage and family therapist, and then individually I see a hypnotherapist once a month. And that's really to get into my subconscious and to get rid of things. So I fight against the need to be perfect. When I was in the military, no matter what I did, it was never good enough. It's either 100% or it's rotten. So 99.99% is bad in the military. You must be 100%. So it's been hard for me to get that out of my head, and that results in a lot of self-condemnation and a lot of self-judgment, that perfectionistic need, which is a very unrealistic thing because none of us can be 100% all the time. And so I mix, physical, like mental health therapy that's not necessarily spiritual with my spiritual walk. And that is how I maintain success and peace.
Beautiful. Now, this book, how long did it take? You said that you started taking notes in 2013. How long did it take you to actually put it from a draft into a publication?
2 years.
2 years. So by 2015, it was published.
No, I just released this book. I just released this book like a month ago.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's brand new. Okay. Is there going to be sequels to that book, or is it like basically it was a one-shot book and now you're going to write about something completely different, or do you think there's a continuation of that?
No, I didn't want to do I didn't want to do a continuation, man. It's like, so basically what I've given you is 2 books in one. It's about a 121,000 word book. And I thought about doing 2 parts, but it was such an emotional roller coaster to go through all of that again and again and again. I didn't want to put myself through it, and I'm not one to keep people waiting. I'm not a team. Okay. So I'm going to give it to you. I'm just going to give it to you. So and on print it's about 331 pages or something like that. So it's not a skinny book, but it is a quick read. And the audio book, which I narrated myself, is just about 10 hours and 30 minutes and some change or something like that. So no, the next book that I'm working on is called Don't Call Me a Christian. And that's going to be a free book. It's going to be fully done and written just like this one was, but I want it to be a free book. So that's the one that I'm working on. And after that, I have a poetry book that I'm working on.
Jeez, talk about being an author. Like when I wrote my first book, that was in 2001, people just said, this is just a fluke. And the second book said, okay, you know what? No problem. You're getting on the right track. But after third or fourth or fifth book, then you're really called an author, because, anyone can write a book the first time around because, you just dump all your ideas. But then really to make yourself really recognized as a due diligent author, I think like more than one book is needed. And the thing is, of course, the challenge is, because trust me, I had writer's block, because it was not a biography, because this seems to be a biography of your own life. So that's basically easier to be able to write about it, even though it could be painful at times. But when you write about theories, when you write about anything else, you have to do research. It takes so much time. It takes so much, I would say it's very draining to a certain extent. So I think in your case, telling about what you went through, I think words come easier, didn't it? Or that was also a big challenge?
Now my friends who are authors told me, they warned me in the beginning that memoirs are harder to write than, say, like fiction.
Okay.
because since you are writing about facts and things like that, then we had to do a lot of research too to be sure. Because if I'm saying this event happened in this day and time, for instance, I've got to be sure I've got that date right. So in the book, if I'm referencing a hurricane that hit the Gulf Coast, or a major disaster that happened, or something great that happened in the world, I've got to be sure, or a street that I lived on and stuff like that. So there was a lot of fact checking that went into it, because it has to be factually accurate to line up to the time frames in the book. And so,
Oh, okay. Because I thought that in this case, it's something that happened to you. I didn't know that you had to be so detailed about what was the external environment that you lived in at that given time to be able to having to do some factual checking. So let's say you, like you said, about if a hurricane happened, what was the date of that hurricane? Because some people will be curious to say, did it really happen on that day? And then they'll just go just by for being curious, they're gonna go and research it. So okay, that's something I didn't know about. So thank you very much for that information.
oh yeah, man. And then I was like you though. I thought I would, oh, it's a memoir. I'm just writing about what happened. I would just be like a big journal entry or a big term
Yes.
paper. That's what I thought.
Okay.
And then I got a rude awakening. It wasn't that way at all. It's so hard to write about yourself, because then you get into the particulars, and then you get into this trap of being too finite and too perfect and stuff like that. I tried my best though, even though it is my first book. I didn't want to let it be a sophomoric effort. I'm a very detailed person. And so I tried my best to make it look like it was maybe my fifth book that I wrote on the first time. So we traveled to cities where events happened in the book, and we filmed a docuseries, which is on the website, because I wanted to go back to where stuff happened to get the most accurate feel for the book. And then I got my court records from Harris County, Texas, Houston, Texas, to get like the cops' verbiage, to dig into the case files, to see it from their angle, to kind of really get a good feel for what was going on in court around me that I didn't know when I was incarcerated. And I got pictures from those times and everything like that. And so I really, really, really tried my best to make it not seem like a first book, even though it is.
So this book has a lot of like images about you being in jail and all that, or was it something that you just took from the court system?
No, it's from my perspective, but I wanted their perspective to have that energy infused into the words, to kind of have like that air. So it's all written from like my point of view, what I'm seeing other people do. So no, in chapter 19, I think it's called Stunt Queens, is very, very detailed of what it's like to be in jail in Houston, Texas, in the gay tank, because it's all gay people and non-straight people. And it's like a gay version of Orange is the New Black.
Okay.
It might be my favorite chapter in the book. It's very dramatic and everything like that. And so no, so like when the SWAT team comes to kick my door in because I'm selling like these crazy amounts of crystal meth and everything like that, that's all like from my perspective, and the police brutality that I received and stuff like that.
So what is the longest chapter of that book? Is it chapter 19?
It might be the final chapter, which is called Not Again. It might be that one. That one's about like 20 something pages.
Okay. And is that something that because you've been reincarcerated again? So is that the not again means that going back to jail over and over again after not learning your lesson?
Right, because I was doing some stupid things in that chapter after I had got out of jail for the final time. And then in that chapter, we get into me running away from the police and stuff like that, and this whole on foot and everything like that, and finally making it into the arms of my mother, who was staying at a hotel room and stuff like that. Because when you've been in jail, so like in Harris County, you don't go outside. So I was in jail for 2 months on that particular trip. So imagine 60 days, no wind, no rain, no sunlight, no moonlight. All you smell is damp air, and all you see is a cement gray cell. That's it. So when I got out, I wasn't trying to be nowhere. I wanted to go to a drug house and shoot up some meth. That is what I wanted to do. And then that's what I went and did. So
Wow.
I was on probation though, so that made me vulnerable to being arrested, because I wasn't supposed to be in a drug house on probation, let alone be shooting up meth. And so things happen and it got weird and it got sketchy, as it does tend to happen when you're surrounded by tweakers.
Yes.
And, so, so I ended up running from, I think it was the cops, or I don't know, but somebody was definitely after me.
Wow. So now, what do you recommend to our listeners to be able, especially like I mentioned, those who are a bit lost, not knowing what if they're actually using drugs, whatever it is? What would you recommend them to do? Like just to get help, to get away from that environment? I mean, what would you suggest?
Well, the first thing is for the person, if now this only applies to somebody who has taken it too far. So if you want to call it drug abuse, drug misuse, whatever, I don't think drugs are bad. They're not bad for everyone. It just depends on the way you've approached them. It got bad for me because I have a very extreme personality. And then I'm coming from a history of trauma, and those things were not resolved before I started doing drugs. And the only reason I started doing them was after I got kicked out of Lakewood, because people had been offering me drugs my whole life, but I always said no, because I had church to be at and I had just more positive influences. But when that was removed, and as an act of rebellion, the next guy who offered me drugs, which it was an ecstasy pill, then I was like, sure, I don't have church to be at. Like, I was volunteering over 10 hours a week at Lakewood, and then that went to zero. And so I had to find something to fill that time with. And so I numb the pain and everything like that with drugs. So everyone has to know why they're doing what they're doing. At the time that I was getting high like that, I didn't realize I was numbing the pain from what happened to me at church. Looking back on it now, I can say that. But if somebody's decided that it's the problem, for me, what worked was reading Rational Recovery. I've been to Crystal Meth Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. I don't like the Anonymous program because it's rooted in fear. And I never cared for calling myself an addict every time that I speak, because I felt like that was reinforcing the very thing I'm trying to get away from. So the program does not make sense to me.
Okay.
So I read Rational Recovery. And while I don't agree with everything in Rational Recovery, it makes more rational sense to me, their approach, because basically they're saying, what you're doing is just stupid and you keep hurting yourself. So just, kind of stop, and then it's not a religious program and the stuff like that. So a lot of people like Rational Recovery because they're not trying to find God in the program. They're just trying to quit the habit. Yes. But the thing that keeps me off of it is the hypnotherapy. So when I see my hypnotherapist each month, we go over and reinforce the reasons why I don't want to stay on drugs. Because the thing about drugs is when it comes back to you to go and use, you don't remember the running from the cops or how you jabbed so many holes in your arm, you had blood on the ceiling. You don't remember the bad stuff. When those feelings come back, you only remember the rosy good stuff. Mm-hmm. And so in hypnotherapy, we dig into my subconscious to keep a full perspective. And through hypnotherapy, we found some of the reasons why I liked doing drugs may have been or like selling them, for instance, may have been the control it gave me over people, because I didn't really have control growing up in my dad's house, which was an abusive household, and then going to the military and then being in the church, and all of those places are not interested in anything but controlling you. We never discovered this in the Anonymous program or in the front of a regular psychotherapist. Mm-hmm. Hypnotherapy has been the thing that has kept me off of drugs.
Beautiful. So how can our listeners find your book? And again, mention the title of the book, please.
Sex, Drugs, and Jesus is the title of the book. And it's at sexdrugsandjesus.com. I like to keep the branding very simple. There'll be links there to the podcast, the blog, any other shows that I go on, all the books I write, and everything, social media, all of that's at sexdrugsandjesus.com.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, drdan, thank you so much for all the time that you've spent with us today. And I do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And thank you again for participating and inspiring our many listeners with your incredible story. Now, we hope that you've all enjoyed today's episode. I'm also very excited about the many upcoming guests that we have scheduled for season 10 of the Happiness Journey podcast, filled with inspirational stories just like the one that you listened to today. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. Drug or sex addicts will likely suffer from other addictive or dysfunctional behaviors. Seldom you will meet an addict who does not exhibit multiple addictive behaviors. Because these addictions are impossible to ignore, so are often in the media spotlight, Often cellular addictive behaviors such as love addiction, compulsive under-earning, and sex addiction may be neglected. Many goes the spiritual route to manage these addiction, and for many of them, it works. Religion have the tendency to help many into recovery, and the latter is a lifelong process. There's no specific cure, no magic pill, no therapy that can assist any addict to completely change their behavior. Once self-awareness kicks in, the road to recovery can start. Never allow your addiction to dictate the rest of your life. You're still in control. My name is Dr. Ddanamzallag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life.